Hi everyone, my name is Letlhogonolo Mokgoroane. I'm this year's National Book Week Ambassador and also co-founder of a really cool podcast called The Cheeky Natives. Yes, I said it's cool, because, we gotta plug ourselves. Which I co-run with the fantastic Dr. Letlhogonolo. And it's actually what we try to do at the podcast is we really try to archive, curate, and have meaningful engagements with Black writers about their books. And today I'm here to talk to you about the importance of books and how books have shaped my life. And so I'll start at this juncture. In 2017, I lost my mom. And it was a really tough time for me, just dealing and processing and grieving. And I was looking for places and I was looking for books that, would help me understand and deal with what I went through, particularly planning a funeral and, some of the politics that come with the plans of the funeral. And I got a book. It's called The Ones with Purpose by Nozuzu Cynthia Jelle. And this book really, really wow, it really is incredible. So I'll read the blurb. The blurb says, with her sister Fikile dead from breast cancer, her father long gone, her mother emerging from years of slumber, and a younger brother Umbuso consumed with rage that refuses to settle, Anele Mabuso has no choice but to collect herself and grow up. Or does she? Because, if truth be told, she has not signed up to be her family's caretaker. Surely her dreams are valid. The Ones with Purpose is a remarkable story of family, disappointment, sacrifice, forgiveness, and love. And I just want to read the start of the book. Nozui writes, I imagine a dying person's last breath as something resembling an exclamation mark, distinct and hanging mid-air like an interrupted thought. My older sister Fikile's last breath before she dies is nothing of that sort. There is no rattling noise at the back of her throat, no relentless twitching, no clinging to life. Fikile dies with no more fuss than a switch of a light bulb. And I remember reading Nozi's book when I read it in 2018, and how Nozi's book was a book that I needed at that particular time. I remember crying at some parts of the book and having to pause in order to internalize my own way. But in many ways, I felt Nozi allowed us as Black people to think about our interior lives and to think about interior lives in terms of grieving and how we participate at funerals. And I thought that was really important for me. I really enjoyed Nozi's book for that reason. And I think for me, books are really that, right? Books for me, for the longest time, have been something that I've found solace in and I've found companionship. I remember when I was a lot younger, I used to be this awkward queer kid who, didn't quite fit in. And I had to read, I thought that reading was my saving grace. And so that's how I began to cultivate this relationship with books. It was a safe space for me, but it was also so exciting and so educational just to get to know other people's lives, right? Like thinking about Anele Mabuso in The Ones with Purpose. It's like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen to Anele next? Why is Anele doing this? I'm so angry at Anele. And for me, it really allowed me to expand my mind. But I also think that books can be very educational. I also think about in university, I used to read law books because I studied law, and how I would use the December holidays to read for pleasure. So I would really be so excited about reading because, oh my gosh, I get to be invested in someone else's life than my own, right? I get to read for leisure. And that's how I've cultivated a reading relationship. I read for leisure every day. I try to carve out time in the evening to read. So what I attempt to do is, I say at a minimum what I will do is read 50 pages of whatever book I've picked up. And that has really been working for me. I feel like right now I can't exist in the world, or I can't function without having my dose of 50 pages, right? Be it nonfiction, be it fiction, be it different genres within those scopes, biographical writing or a novel or a collection of short stories. And I find that that's been so important to me because I've discovered so many wonderful people through reading. I've discovered so many wonderful things that I didn't know through reading. Sometimes I felt like I was transported to another country without having to be there. So I often think about how we read a lot of Nigerian writings, right? And how I probably know what Lagos looks like because I've read it, right? I probably look what Abuja looks like because I just read it and people have painted these beautiful pictures. So I feel like when I finally land in Nigeria, I'm just going to be like, oh, this is the Lagos that they speak of. And so I think that books, for me, has, one, improved my vocabulary, because I think it's really important for you to like look at this word and be like, oh my gosh, what does it mean? And when I was younger, I used to be like, I'm going to use this word in everything that I do. So when you think of words like cantankerous, right, it just sounds beautiful. So you just throw it in everywhere that you want to use, right? And I remember reading The Lives of Great Men and like really been so like titillated by Cheke's use of the word salacious. So like salacious, it just sounds so nice. So there's really an improvement of your vocabulary, but I think also an improvement of your writing style. I think that once you read more, your writing improves because you are more conscious of how that certain words mean particular things, and therefore you can't use them in this context, but you use them in another context. But also it allows you to process information, for me at least, a little bit faster. I find that when I'm reading a newspaper article, for instance, I'm able to capture because I'm used to, taking in a lot of volume of work. And I also really read for fun. I think about Lolo Shenian's The Secret Life of Babasegi's Wives. And I'm like, oh, that book is so hilarious. It is so hilarious, right? And how I just wanted to know what's going to happen to these women and what are their lives and why do they have secret lives? And Lola really does such amazing work with her prose, right? That you laugh, sometimes you just like, you cringe, but you're laughing, you're mainly laughing because of that. And then I think about to think about myself as a queer person and how like many times like we aren't represented in writings, and when we are represented, we're represented as like people on the periphery or people that are deviant, like we're not, like our full lives are not represented. And so I think about like Keletso Mopai's short story collection, If You Keep Digging, which is really something that I really return to often because I think like that short story collection really puts the lives of queer folks at the forefront. And it's not only about that, right? It's about colorism, it's about hair politics, it's about ancestral claims, it's about spirituality. There's so much richness in it that I think that people should just go out and get it. Just because, it's short stories. What I really also love about short stories is like, if you're someone who doesn't want to commit immediately, what you'll do is you'll read one story, leave it, and then come back at a later stage to read another story. And that's so nice because you're not committed in the way that you would if it was a novel. And then I wanted to talk about Khamer, which is The Makings of a Water Slums, which was published this year. And I wanted to read some extracts from it because I think like this book is so important for me, particularly as a queer person, but also to think about like some contemporary issues that we're thinking about in South Africa, questions of religions, questions of like land, questions of race, that this book is really that. So I wanted to read a bit of what Jamil writes in the book. Jamil writes, danger to a 4-year-old is like Greek mythology, always something that other people worry about. Until then, the earth had always stayed steady under my feet, even if it were only to teach me respect for gravity. Counting my steps around, the edge of a hole provided solace for the chaos happening inside the house. I was a very contained child, though not stunted. My imagination was always a refuge, an unseen world where I could live freely, a world where I wasn't hiding from the policing of adults, the cruelty of prejudiced children, or fear of the ever-present danger of difference, which follows people like me to their graves. I didn't feel the fall, but my view had changed suddenly. A mountain of deep brown earth eclipsed my view from the house. And I think about this book quite often, and I think about like how Jamil, in a really searingly beautiful way, manages to capture our lives, right? Our lives as people who are marginalized, our lives as people who are pushed really to the fringes, and how in many ways, like, us reading the work validates the experience. Jamil ends the note to reader by saying, we deserve every chance to be remembered. And books are that for me, right? Like, it's just like a remembrance. I think about people who've died, who we are connected with because they've written books, right? So you think about a number of people who've passed away, like Silo K. Dacre, who passed away, but like you can always get a glimpse of his mind because he wrote The Quiet Violence of Dreams, he wrote The Hidden Star, and wrote 13 Cents. And I think that's me. My encouragement to you is, one, I think that oftentimes a reading culture is developed by finding books that speak to you. So find books that speak to you, find people and who are voracious readers and be like, hey, I'm looking to read, along this lines. Is there anything that you can recommend for me as a starter? And I think that's important for us to recommend books for people who are starting out. And yes, that's me. I just think that reading is so important and cultivating a reading culture is so important. Thank you.